All right. What's up? So I ain't did this in about a week. So honestly, this is actually a good one to start on because this book right here, Black God from Dr. Supreme Understanding, is actually a really good book that I've read. It's very informative. You don't get that type of information, honestly, in some of these books. But what's interesting about this book is that um, I had to do a lot of more research outside of this book rather than what I've learned from here. And the reason why I say that is because solely um, the person that wrote this book has a very interesting personality. So there's a way that I talk when I do my lives. I try to be as authentic as I can. If I'm upset, I'm upset. If I'm happy, I show I'm happy. I show my emotions and stuff. And when I write my books, none of that's in there. It's more professional like type. Um, it's more easier for the ears because I'm trying to convey a message to somebody that paid to pay money to read something from me. In this case, if this isn't the first book you started with, if you started with other books of his, you'll notice that Dr. Supreme Understanding has a very way that he uses his words, a very interesting way he uses his words. So he does curse a lot, and he just in some ways almost talks negative about certain groups of individuals. So his books are good, they're informative. It's just a really hard read. His books are really hard to read. And I just feel like if he would have took his personality and took it out of this book would probably sell more and make more, and also share knowledge, a way more knowledge. So, but this book right here is pretty good. On the back of it, when you get it, it says, "Have you ever heard that Christ was black? What about the Buddha, Krishna? They weren't alone." This book explores the many black gods of the ancient world from the Near East to Africa, Asia, Europe, Australia, and the Pacific Islands, all the way to the Americas, where black gods are found as far north as among the native people of Alaska. Indeed, these gods were once found everywhere in many places. They are still worshipped today. Who were they? Was their color only symbolic, or were these deities based on actual people? How did they come to be worshipped, and what does this mean for us today? In this easy to read text, you'll find brief introductions of the world's religions, followed by a dive into the black side of these traditions. Historian Supreme Understanding explores the secrecy surrounding the Black Madonna and Christ in Europe, the reason so many of India's gods are black, the origins of ancient Egyptian deities, and the true history behind the black warrior gods of China and Japan. The final chapter covers the history of black theology in the US, revealing that the idea of black gods is not a modern idea. Okay. Many of these stories have never been told to the public. The text, written like an encyclopedia, is accompanied by dozens of pictures and references, so it's clear we're not making this stuff up. It's safe to say you've never read a book like this. It may change the way you think about everything. Now, what I like about this book is the fact that, yes, when I pick up a book and you tell me something is factual, um, I want to know where that source is at. So I'm going to go do just like anybody. I'm going to pick up this book here. I'm going to read this book here, right? Then I'm going to go ahead and find something interesting in it. And then I'm going to go take what that interest is, and I'm going to go do my due diligence in my research, and I should be able to find whatever it is that you said, right? So you should be able to back up what you say, and that's what I like a lot, backing up what you say. And from what I understand, because he doesn't tell you in this book, you have to read a series of books of his, and I've already went over some of them already in the past. When the World Was Black, Part One and Part Two, Science of Self, and might be another one that I might have went over. There's some more that I got to go over, but anyway, he basically the way that I learned how they describe black is not black as there's only one group of black people, meaning that black is basically light brown to dark brown skin. Okay, you look at me, you see my hair, you wouldn't look at me and be like, "Yo, that dude's African American," or "He has African American in it." My father's actually African American. My mom is German and Turkish, and then between all that, I got other things which is actually explained in my book, Journey Through the Origins of History. I actually break down from a DNA analysis at that time what it says I had in me. So I basically just try to stick with the facts. Basically, if you say something, I should be able to find out what you said, basically, right? But this is the thing. That doesn't always makes it factual. Just lets me know that when I go into an argument or a debate with somebody and they say, "Well, where did you get that from?" I'm like, "Well, I got it from this book." And they'll be like, "Oh, that book ain't blah blah blah." Well, this person actually, I believe he has a PhD, if I'm not mistaken. I know when he was writing his books, he was working on his master's, or he had just got his master's and he was going to get something. But anyway, this dude's an intelligent individual. His name is Dr. Supreme Understanding, but that's not his real name. His real name, I can't say his real name, but he's from India, or he's Indian, or his parents are at least, and he was at least a 5%er. So I'll be going over that in the future. Matter of fact, the next book will be explaining exactly what a 5%er is. So I'll be on the lookout for that. That's going to be probably next week sometime. But with this book here, it's very informative. You got sources. It's not your typical go-to type source book, but it's a book where, hey, if you're discussing anything about black gods, light brown to dark brown skin, this will be a good book to have in your back pocket. So, and what he likes about his books, and he says this all the time, he wants people to share what's in his books. So if you know something, or if you have a book of his and you want to share what you learned in it, he definitely loves it. He talks about it. I mean, he says it right in the beginning. But the first tab that I got tabbed up, because of course every book that I own has these tabs. See, one thing about me is, and I tell people this all the time, I don't have to act like I know anything. I don't. I just have a lot of books all around me, and every one of them that I've read that I have now up at a certain age has tabs like this in there, meaning that whenever I get bored and I feel like relearning something or refreshing my memory, I go grab a book of mine and I just go through these tabs and I just read them. And however long it takes me to read those tabs, I'll read those. That's what I'll do for that moment. So I'll read those tabs. If I pick this book up in the morning time, by the evening time, I should have read all these tabs. And of course, I'll be going most of them live here. So it's just a way for me to refresh my memory. If I have a debate or an argument or a discussion with somebody, no matter where it's at, and I'm at home and I'm able to go to my library. If we're talking about black gods, for instance, and I start throwing out their facts about these gods that are considered black gods, and they're like, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about," blah blah blah. I'll just be like, "Well," and the good thing about his books is he gives sources, so I don't even have to say this book. I could just use the source, but I'll say, "Hey, well, according to Dr. Supreme Understanding in his book, Black God, an Introduction to the World's Religions and Their Black Gods, on page blah, 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 here it says blah, 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 blah. And then this is the source for it, which you can go look for yourself. Then you can trust and verify your own self." So I'm saying it's very simple for me just to just go pick up a book. And this is not the only good book that I have about black gods. And what I mean by black gods is that this isn't the only book that I have about gods that are considered black gods that have books on themselves. Like I have plenty of books about, when they talk about Krishna, I have books on Krishna in there. So, I can go get this book and be like, oh, let me go grab a Krishna book and then have that argument or discussion then. So here's the first tab that I tabbed up. It says, don't get the premise of this book wrong. I'm not saying that all the world's cultures have described God as a flesh and blood black man. Most cultures have a creation story, and these stories often recognize a time before the physical universe existed. This is where we find the God who was God before there was an earth to inhabit. Throughout this book, you'll see examples of this transcendent idea of God who is often self created or had no beginning. Most of the world's cultures didn't bother to describe this creator in a physical language, rather, using abstract terms that refer to a consciousness that predated the physical world. In the physical world, however, this God becomes manifest as an immanent being, not simply a supreme mind. This God is a supreme being because he exists in the world. The question is, does this God exist? Most of the world's cultures describe him like a man, often the father of all men, and sometimes the first man himself. Most people who are familiar with the traditions of their religion know this already. What many do not know is the skin that this God almost always chose to veil himself in was black. Now, this is interesting to me because people will say, well, in Christianity, we don't think of God as a man, but yes, you do, because you remember, and I'm going to be honest with you, when Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, when they heard God walking through the Garden of Eden, they went to go hide behind the bush. Remember? So that's man like. That's what I understand when he says man like that. He is in the physical form because you can hear somebody walking coming up on you. You know what I'm saying? Especially if you're like in some type of quiet area, right? So the next tab that I did up is the question of the explanation of the origin of these black gods is extremely complex. In some cases, we may suspect that they represent a racial type familiar to people who first introduced them this form of worship. We must remember that among some races, blackness of complexion is not alone considered not unbecoming, but is even admired. One of the titles of the Zulu kings, for instance, was "You Who Are Black." And the lady in Akhenaton's Songs of Solomon says, "I am black, but commonly, O daughters of Jerusalem." We find the Egyptian queen's Nefertari, consort of Ahmosis, identified with Isis and depicted as a black-skinned goddess. Hence, we can explain why Saint Benedito, a Negro saint, is worshipped on the Amazon and on the Gold Coast of West Africa. The white man's God is said to be black. So that's what he says right there. So the next tab says, did you know Hindus was simply the old Persian name of the Indus Valley related to the Sanskrit Sindhu? Hindustan in Persian meant land of the Indus. The Persian term made it into Arabic as Al-Hind and into Greek as Indos, which ultimately became the English India in their original languages. Both Hindus and Sindhu meant black. According to Elizabeth Hamilton, the word Hind is often used by the Persian poets to signify black or dark colored, and it is probable that Hindu may mean no more than a black man, as our Negro from Niger. Okay. So this is the next tab. Krishna, incarnation of the supreme God. Krishna is one of the most important gods in the Hindu pantheon. He is the central figure in the Mahabharata, one of the most important Hindu epics, and is regarded as an incarnation of the supreme god Vishnu by millions of Hindus everywhere. Krishna is almost always depicted with black skin. When he is not, he is depicted with blue skin. But it remains understood that this is only symbolic of his true black color. So one thing that I learned about blue when it's depicted on artifacts like this, for instance, it's usually synonymous for black. That's what I've learned. So, and I was just going into it. So, keep going. Says if you Google why is Krishna black, you might come across the following explanation, which is based entirely on Hindu scripture. Says once Mother Yashoda called Krishna and asked him, "Darling Krishna, people doubt who you belong to. Krishna, to you, of course, Mother Yashoda. But people say all sorts of things. They point out that though your father and I both are extremely fair in complexion, you are dark in contrast. Why is it so? Krishna, Mother, it is because of you. When I was born, I too was fair like you. However, it was pitch black, pitch dark at that time. You were sleeping away merrily. I was sleeplessly turning sides the whole night. As a consequence, the darkness of the night stuck to me and I became black. Now that's pretty interesting, right? That's a story. Did I try to find that scripture? Yeah, you better believe I tried to. Could I find it? I couldn't find it. But that was a long time ago. And I think the only reason why I couldn't find it is because I didn't know how to um look for it, because this is one of the things he doesn't give you a source for it, and usually he gives you sources for it. And that kind of upsetted me because it keeps going. It actually keeps going on to the next page, the whole thing. But I don't know exactly where to find that at. So, but I mean, in the beginning, he just says, where was it, a Hindu scripture, so from where exactly? Right. So yeah, so that one kind of messed me up. So it continues on the next tab, the Krishna's connection. The name Krsna itself means black. Krishna was also known for the name Kanhoya, Kanhaya, which literally means black man. The Prophet Muhammad may have recognized that Krishna was revered in India as a black god because a hadith records him saying there was a prophet of a god in India who was black skinned, and his name was Kahan, Kahan. The words Kahan and Kanhaya are believed to be related, So I take that with a grain of salt, and that's one of the things that I don't like when people put in books like this when they're supposed to be informative. They'll say possibly or believe, and it's just like, just stick to what you do know. Don't go with the possiblies and what you might believe. You know what I mean? All right. So the next tab is Mayon, a native black god. Earlier we mentioned some of the local black gods who were absorbed under the worship of Krishna. In other cases, these older gods were said to be the same as newer Brahmin deities under wait, hold up. Deities who had similar traits. I was reading the next line. For example, the authors of the Bhagavad Gita attempt to integrate the southern pastoral or fertility deity Mayon, the black, with the child god of Gokulu in Kathiar War, and the adolescent romantic hero dwelling in Vrindavana. The similarity between them made it easy to say that Mayon was really no different from these minor characters, and that worship of Mayon should cease so that the real Brahmin god could take over. Okay, so this is that tab. I actually wrote about this god, and and some more details on my website. It falls under Who Are These Gods and Goddesses? And I think it's actually under part 2 of that, because that was an extra interesting god that I wanted to learn about. I wrote about it in my article. Here we go. So the next tab is traditionally in European and American cultures, the color black often takes on a derogatory meaning. First, being black or dark skinned often reduces one to a lesser status in society. Second, the languages pick up this attribution and mirror the prejudices of the culture. For example, the usages blackball, black market, black book, blacklist, etc., mean that black is not desirable. On the other hand, whiteness is associated with honesty, beauty, and desirability. Bengali culture, however, is caught in a similar conflict between blackness and whiteness. On one hand, perhaps because of having Caucasian ancestors in the remote past and of living under a white nation's rule, whiteness is preferred and even valued. However, because of the colossal presence of Krishna in his legacy, and because many native Bengali men and women are dark skinned, a tradition of celebrating blackness has also emerged in the European languages, such as tradition of celebrating blackness is relatively rare. Later, the Bengali poet Rabindranath Thakur from 1861 to 1941 would borrow from the Vaisnava tradition. He has many poems with metaphors like tender as the black night. They call her black. I call her black tulip. Awesome black like thin universe with some stars here and there. In your black eyes is reflected the shadow of rain, or engulf me like a black night. Many other contemporary and classical Bengali poets and musicians are openly celebratory about being black, being in the company of persons who are black, and of surrender to a black god. So that's pretty interesting to me. So I could just say this. I always talk about Krishna a lot, only because of the simple fact he's a very important god. But I also know that people relate Krishna and Christ together being one and the same. They try to say that it's linguistically together and other ways. So, like I said, I will say this book right here is probably I think it's a very good book to get. I think everybody should go get this book here and read it. Understand what is trying to be shared in this book, so that way you understand that at bare minimum that you don't have to agree how somebody presents something. It's just information that you should be worried about. And that's what I worry about mostly. I don't care about people's personalities too much. I just want the information. But here's the I'm trying to get to the next tab. Here we go. The Black Immortals. Most historians don't say much about the little black people of ancient China. Chinese anthropologist Li Chai makes a reference to blackish colored dwarfs in the official history of the Liang dynasty 502 to 556 AD, but comes up short for other references in early Chinese literature. I'm not sure how he missed it, but the Chinese actually have a rich literary and artistic tradition centered on the indigenous black people, who may have been the direct descendants of China's first settlers. Somehow, after first reaching the area over 50,000 years ago, these people survived well into recent times. They didn't maintain large communities, but the mere fact that any of them survived is a testament to who and what they were. Thus, we do find records of their presence. The stories are remarkable and sound like myths and legends. For starters, Kunlun Nu, the Negrito slave, is a popular Chinese romance written during the Tang Dynasty around 880 AD. The hero of the tale is a Negrito slave named Mole, who has supernatural physical abilities. After Mole saves his master's lover, who has now fallen for him, he finally escapes with his dagger, apparently his only possession. He literally flies over the city walls to escape apprehension. This small but legendary black man is seen over 10 years later selling medicine in the city, not having aged a single day. Okay. So China has indigenous people with light brown to dark brown skin, which are considered black. Here's the next tab. Did you know? This is actually pretty cool. Black animals, such as blackbird and the occupied special place in totems of the ancient Chinese, as noted by James George Fraser. Totemism is peculiar to people of color and never found independently developed amongst whites. The blackbird specifically has been found as a symbol of God and the first man among several peoples throughout ancient world, from the ancient Mayans to the people of ancient India, while the ox or black bull has been a symbol of male virility and thus identified with early ancestors, progenitors, or creator gods, particularly among people who adopted pastoralism. So, I mean, he gives you did you knows. That's why I started doing on my X account. He's giving little snippets of facts, and you can go down those little rabbit holes you want to. But the fact is that there's certain reasons why animals are depicted and used to represent a group of people. And there's so many different reasons why that is. But for the most part, there's the symbolic reason matches everything that is supposed to match, such as like sometimes if they do like black charcoal skin, it's going to be it's representing a black person. I've actually heard people come out their mouth and specifically say when somebody's depicted in brown or black skin doesn't always mean that they're black, that they're actually black Caucasians. I've actually heard people say that they're not black people or Africans, but or black Africans, that they're black Caucasians. So I'm gonna go to the next tab. There were no men when the sky and the earth were separated. It was Nuwa, or another word is Nukua, who made men by molding yellow clay. Okay, that's probably where you get yellow people from, right? Yellow clay, right? The work was so taxing that her strength was not equal to it, so she dipped a rope into the mud and then lifted it. The mud that dripped from the rope into rope also became man. Those made by molding yellow clay were rich and noble, while those made by lifting the rope were poor and low. So, I mean, just think about that. I mean, there's a reason why people say yellow people. Some people will say, "Oh, that's racist," or "That's, uh, uh, derogatory or wrong," or something like that. But it says yellow clay right here, so yellow people. I mean, the black gods of Japan in the 1500s. Few Europeans had explored Japan, much less written about it to tell others. In 1602, Marcelo de Rabanero published one of the first European accounts of Japanese religion and culture. The black gods, Amida and Axca. As we might expect, Rabadanero's account is hostile and shallow. What's notable, however, is that he calls the Japanese an idol-loving people who worship a large number of gods, the most important of which are Amida and the black god Axca. Rabadanera says both gods were once men, perhaps rulers of kingdoms. He is partly right. Axca refers to Shakyamuni, the Buddha, widely considered the supreme Buddha in most schools of Buddhism. Amida also refers to a Buddha, Amitabha Buddha, the principal figure in the Pure Land sect, a branch of Buddhism popular in Japan. Amitabha Ba is also recognized in other sects of Buddhism. Most traditions trace him back to the monk Dharmakara, who studied and became who eventually became a Buddha. So that's some more sources on Japanese gods. Okay, hey, this tab, I didn't even tab this up, but it says black demons. Across royal communities in Japan, there are legends describing black demons inhabiting the hillsides and mountains where the Ainu and other indigenous populations once lived. Although later populations came to fear these beings, such as the Tengu, it's likely that these myths were originally based on native black populations. They may see, there goes that possibly were likely. They may actually refer to the little black people who came to Japan even before the Ainu. Such people had been forced into isolation in these areas when foreign populations took over. If and when people saw black people leaving the mountainsides, they must have been frightened, having never seen black skinned people before. Do these myths have anything in common with the legends associated with the little black people of China, like Mole? What about the myths we discussed in Northern Europe? So, what's very interesting about China and Japanese is I actually have a couple of books on Japanese and Chinese myths, just the myths themselves, right? And in both, even when they're written by a Japanese or somebody that's from Japan or from China, in their introduction of their books, on both sides, actually, they both say that the religions, the gods, the many gods of China and Japan, they're one in the same with Japan. China and Japan are one in the same. They have different names, of course, and some of the gods, there are some gods that are not all in Japan and some gods that are not in China, but there's some main gods, common gods, I guess you can say, within the group that are similar, which is very interesting. And there's always a fight. Well, not a fight, but a disagreement on which ones came first. Was it the Chinese gods or the Japanese gods? Is always, with the time differences and stuff like that. But for the most part, it's very interesting that China and Japan um, usually have the same gods. So, all right. So the next tab I got up was the darkest man. Okay, no, I got to read this part because it's from a specific person. It says, "Thus is no surprise that Italian explorer Marco Polo, and anybody can go get his books, and I'll be going over his stuff in the future, reported that the people he visited in India were in love with their blackness." Okay, this is what he says: "The darkest man in here, the most highly esteemed and considered better than the others who are not so dark. Let me add that in very truth, these people portray and depict their gods and their idols black and their devils white as snow." That's where you get the white devil from. "For they say that God and all the saints are black and the devils are all white. That is why they portray them as I have described." So Marco Polo says this in his books, and like I said, I'll be going over his books, so we'll be able to trust but verify this information. But right now, this is what Dr. Supreme Understanding says in his book, and it's just interesting that just here. I mean, even me growing up having a white mom and a black father, I mean, it was only natural that I want to hear both sides of different things on negativity on both sides. But I did hear a lot white devil. I heard that a lot, and I can see where it possibly came from. The gods of Judaism. I'll tell you something that might bother you. Despite the Christian church's attempt to hold a monopoly on monotheism, the Old Testament doesn't actually teach that there's only one God. Seriously. Even the commandment that thou shalt not keep other gods doesn't dictate that other gods don't exist. The commandment was simply a demand that this one God was the boss of them all and would accept no competition for attention from those who would follow this tradition. Now, this is what I like to say, and this is just through my research. What I'd like to say is, um, I do believe there is one supreme being, one supreme God, one supreme all around boss, I guess you could say, or go to, whatever, right? Because everybody has their own words for it. But I can understand why people say that Christianity or Judaism or any Bible that anybody that follows behind, the 66 books. I can see why some people say that they feel like they believe that they feel like they worship more multiple gods. Throughout my journey, the word monotheism I learned about. Then you hear about polytheism, right? Polytheistic religion, which is multiple gods. Then there's another one which is called henotheism, henotheistic religion, right? Which is basically that you have one powerful supreme God, but you don't uh deny the other gods, the lesser gods, I guess you could say, right? So you understand that there are other gods. The words gods actually trips people up. There's a whole way that you have to understand it. So if you're not really emotionally involved in trying to argue with something and want to learn something, the word God, gods, and so on and so forth is a very tricky word and it's very hard to understand. And I actually have a book on that specifically that I'll go into in the future. But it says, so let's keep going. So, no, not as monotheistic as some may think. In fact, there are several gods identified in the books of the Old Testament with names like El, Elohim, Yahweh, Ba, Adonai, Yah, Shaddai, and so on. This is because the Old Testament is a compilation of many different traditions from all over the Near East, which is actually true because I actually did a podcast discussion with Jeff Benner, who's a Hebrew scholar who translates a lot of Hebrew, who is very intelligent. We discussed that, and so I understand that part. The anthropomorphic God. In Genesis, Adam, Eve are hiding from God in the Garden of Eden, and God can't find them. They hear his footsteps when he approaches their hiding place. Again, very human stuff. That's what I was talking about earlier, about God walking through the Garden of Eden. The authors of this scriptures recorded dozens of instances where God is described either as a man, and they give you a couple of scriptures, and you know what? It's just so easy just to go type in Chat GPT or Grok or whatever. Hey, give me some scriptures that describe God as a man, and you'll get you a few of them. It's clear that these writers thought of their God in anthropomorphic, meaning they saw him as flesh and blood, only surpassing them in knowledge and power. At the same time, man himself is often described as a possessing the spirit and agency of the creator, having the potential to become gods and being by nature. The anthropomorphic human nature of God goes hand in hand with man's potential for theosis, becoming God. Knowing this helps us understand the teachings of the Hebrew community in better context. So he got El and Elohim right here. He says one of the words used for God in the Old Testament is Elohim, which actually means gods in Hebrew. Elohim is plural of El, a popular name for the God of the Old Testament. El, or Eloah, is merely a botched transliteration of the original Hebrew name. Now, let me just say something. That's not actually all correct how he said that. So Elohim, yes, is plural depending on context, but it also can be singular depending on context. And that's what he should have made clear when he said that. And he doesn't make it clear right here. He says the word Elohim or Allahim is also used to refer to the group of men who were regarded as the leaders of the Hebrew people, the judges. Okay, so he doesn't clarify and say that Elohim it can be one God or many gods. And that's something that I think that people, because he's not wrong what he's saying, but he's not accurate what he's saying. And what I mean by that is that yes, it's accurate that Elohim is multiple gods, but he's taken away from the fact that it also means singular. And what I mean by accurate is that you're giving out all the information about what you're talking about. And it's very simple. He could have just easily just said Elohim. And let me just make sure. Yeah, he says it means gods in Hebrew. Yeah, so anyway, next one is oh no, I already read that one. Uh Here we go. So he has a chapter uh Mesopotamian religion. He talks about Anu, Ishtar, and Enlil. And he says, here we go. Now this is where it's interesting. He did, I don't know. He says that a passage from the renowned Babylonian epic of Gilgamesh says something similar about Enlil, the son of Anu. It says, Father Enlil, Lord of the countries, Father Enlil, Lord of the true word, Father Enlil, pastor of the blacks. Now, this is where I think that he's trying to take that everything that says blacks means that these people were black people. Um, the Sumerians were considered the black-headed people. They are also known as the black-headed ones. They were also known as brothers, which is very interesting to me because of the simple fact that when I hear brothers a lot, I think of Freemasonry. But I've read plenty of times that the Sumerians, because they were considered brothers, that's why Enlil and Enki were considered brothers. Because some people believe that they were just regular people. Also, what is it? They were called what was it, black-headed ones, black-headed people, and there's another one that I can't remember. It always slips my mind. Um, oh Jesus. I can't remember, but anyway, it's supposed to basically just mean people in all general, right? So I think what he's trying to say is when he reads that little part from the Epic of Gilgamesh, he's like, yeah, they're black people. Do I believe the Sumerians were black people, light brown and dark brown skin? Yes, I do. I actually did an article on it, and I used DNA to back up what I said. And the reason why, and I'll keep it short, is that the indigenous people of Iraq and Afghanistan or in that area, if you get their DNA sample, you'll see that some of them came from Africa, and you can trace their haplogroups, which I've done that. Wrote 2 articles on it, and it's on my website, rebirthoftheword.com. And yes, you'll find different DNA. You'll find European and Asian different. You'll find different types of DNA, but the oldest DNA haplogroup in their lineage is from Africa. So that's why I use that. But anyway, in this epic, in the African origins of civilization, uh, in the epic, Anu, the primitive god, father of Ishtar, has the same Negro name as Osiris, the Onian. The goddess Ishtar took the floor and spoke thus to God Anu, her father. We have already seen that according to Amelianu, the Anu were the first blacks to inhabit Egypt. A number of them remained in Arabia, Patria. Throughout Egyptian history, the Negro Anu is thus an historical fact, not a mental concept or a working hypothesis. I tried to find information on that. I couldn't find it, but what I will say is that Anu is actually, you can find that word being used in the Egypt, in ancient Egypt, actually. There's not that much information mentioned about Anu in Mesopotamia at all. Actually, there's an argument, which is pretty interesting. In Mesopotamia, Anu is usually described with his pictographic script, the star symbol, or the or whatnot. But he's actually written down in hieroglyphs also in Egypt. And there's argument that he's mentioned in Egypt more than he is mentioned in Mesopotamia. What's also interesting that there's a group of people in Africa who are known as the Anu people, and they came and they are well known way before the Sumerians. Now, what's the other interesting thing is that the Dogon tribe used to inhabit the land of Egypt before the Islam took over. Now, what's interesting is that the Dogon tribe the ancient Egyptians and the Mesopotamians have the same haplogroups, or it's roundabout, right? And you can trace their DNA. So the Dogon tribe actually inhabited the land of Egypt first. And their history relates a lot close to the Sumerians and the Egyptians. I actually did a podcast discussion with Larry Scranton on his books, Dogon Tribe, The Science of the Dogon. I believe that's the title of it. And I've actually have the translations or from the guy that spent time with the Dogon Tribe. I can never remember his name, but he spent time with the chief guy at in Dogon, and I'll be going over his book in the future. That's why I'm so knowledgeable on the Dogon tribe and say that what I'm saying is because I traced the history and just the DNA also. So um that's interesting. I got to say for myself. The next tab is I don't know why I did this. The most popular picture, the one your grandma probably has hanging up in her living room, was based on a European named Cesar Borgia. Similarly, the images adorning the ceilings of the Sistine Chapel were based on the painter Michelangelo's family, but there's no way these individuals really looked like Italians. Scholars agree that the historical Christ would have at least been brown skinned. If we look at the fact that Jesus was hidden in Egypt at a time when Egyptians were darker than they are now, we can even assume that he may have been darker than the average Arab or Palestinian today. If we factor in the account of John in the book of Revelation, we could even go so far as to assume that the historical Christ was a dark brown complexion with woolly hair. And this is the image that we find supported by the earliest historical evidence. Now, I actually have let me see if it's in here before I say anything. Okay, so I actually learned there's this depiction, and it's I can't remember what's that. I actually have it on my website. The oldest depiction of Jesus Christ is like on some kind of catacombs or something like that, and it's brown skin, and it's the oldest depiction of Jesus, one of the oldest depictions of Jesus, of what they represent, of what their Jesus was. And it has brown skin. Now, do I know if or believe or think that is Jesus, or how do I know that they think it's Jesus? I can't answer that, but I just know that when I go type in and look up is the oldest depiction of Jesus, the one that I found um was let me see if I can find it real quick. Um was a brown skin, oldest depiction of Jesus. Let's see if I can find it real quick. It's in the catacombs, so I gotta look that up because I could tell you to look it up and you'll find something that don't even match what I'm talking about, and that would be crazy. So let me see. I probably have to go through my website because it took me a while to find it. Well, it didn't take me a while to find it. It was kind of uh interesting how I found it. I think I know where is it at. Um, I'm pretty sure I know where it's at. Let's see, who are these? All these gods and goddesses. I want to say it's probably. Let's see. It's probably under. I think it's under. What's that? No, it's not under that one. Dang. I got a lot of stuff on my website. Rebirthoftheword.com. I try to keep a good bit of piece of information of what it's basically my website is basically just a blog or journal to what I've learned. I'm about to pull it up right now because I think I found it. I'm pretty sure I found it. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, that's it. So see if I can make this bigger. Yep, I can. So this is the healing of the paralytic, one of the oldest possible depictions of Jesus from the Syrian city of Dor, Europa, dating from 235 AD. And this is it right here. This is what I found. We could probably type that in. ChatGPT. This was way before ChatGPT and all that other stuff. When did I write this? Let's see. I won't give you a date because I don't know what. Yeah, but see, I did a whole thing on Jesus, a whole article on him on my website, rebirthoftheword.com. It's under, this is under puzzle pieces of history. So you just click under here. If you go to my website, Knowledge is Power, who are all these gods, 1 and 2. So I got a list of gods, exploring the religions of the world, the history of writing systems, the ancient civilizations, basically just different civilizations that I came to. Sumerian king list, which you can read, the Atar Hasis, you can read yourself, and the Enuma Elish, you can read yourself. Jay-Z Remy, he's a Gnostic guy that I know. He's a guest speaker, guest author. I did speak with him on a podcast. We have a podcast discussion. And then you can see all my articles right here. Local history, fuel for knowledge, all my explorations and histories in my book. But local history is something that I've been doing, that I'm going to be doing a lot. This is perfect time to talk about it. So I won't have enough time to go over every single book that I have. Okay, that's just impossible. I have a lot of books. I would have to go over a book every single day, probably 3 or 4 books every single day, just to go over every book that I have. It's impossible. Some of these books are so thick, it's going to take multiple times to go over. There's something that I am on a new journey of, so pay attention to that, because there's going to be a new thing coming up. But I'm focused more on local history. So my goal is not to go to 50 states, or my goal is to try to at least go to 50 states, but I at least want to write, do an article and a video on a historical place or something cool historical on each state. Meaning that there are places in Georgia, like Lookout Mountain, where you can go and see 7 states, and they have history markers on there. So I'll be able to say, hey, these 7 states, you know what I'm saying? I've been to those 7 states already. I've already been to a lot of states, but basically all I want to do, basically what I'm doing is I'm going to different places and I'm writing articles on them. So I got Georgia right here. I got like 20 some videos on here. I got some from Florida and a couple other places that I need to still update. But because I live in Georgia, most of it's going to be in Georgia, of course. And I've done places like Midway museums, where some old churches, Fort Stewart military base. I've been to, Air Force bases. I've been to plenty of mounds. I mean, I've been to all kinds of places. Pilot Mountain, oldest museum in America. I mean, I got Florida, I got North Carolina, South Carolina. I'm gonna have a lot. I have a lot of states down here that I need to put on here, like Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, Florida, and then I'm gonna start visiting a lot more states and doing it. I've been to a lot of places, but this is something that I just started. I started this just recently, about a year ago, matter of fact. Yeah, about a year. I want to say about a year ago. Yeah, last year. I started this last year, and I visited all these places. And I have, like I said, I have 20 more places already that I need to update on my YouTube. So that's why I said I'm going to start focus more on that. My goal was to try to go through all these books, but that's impossible. So I do have social media, Facebook, Twitter, X account, all that other stuff. And I do have where I share every single day what I've learned from reading this book. And it's basically the typing version of this. So what I'll do is I'll take a picture of this book. This is what I'll do. I'll take a picture of the front cover, and I'll go to one of these tabs and I'll take a picture of the tab. I'll copy, paste, highlight it, copy it on my phone, quote it, and then I'll give what I'm doing right now, basically. So instead of me, but I take pictures of each tabs that I do, and I go through them that way so you can see it. So I've been doing that for years. I've been doing that since I've been reading. So I'm on social media, I have the information out there. I just don't have a video on it. I just decided to do a video on it because I guess I wanted to create some content and show people. So, but this was basically just to show people that I know what the hell I'm talking about. This is not to say that, I'm the smartest man and you got to believe me. I'm just saying, look, at bare minimum, I've read it. I mean, if somebody came to me with tabs like this on all their books in their library, I would look at them kind of crazy and be like, man, you got too much time on your hands. And yes, I do. I have a lot of time on my hands. My kids are at school right now. My wife is at work. I take care of home. I'm retired. I was wounded in combat, so I get to stay home and deal with my issues at home. But this is what I do. So you can catch I can, like I said, I'm able to back up what I say. So I don't have to even argue or fight or with anybody like that. I can back up what I say. Okay, so Osiris. Why do Egyptologists attempt to trace everything in the Nile Valley back to the Near East? Simply because the ancient Near East is not seen as an indigenous Black area, even though it was. The goal is to associate the Near East with people who look Caucasian and to make ancient Egypt out to be the work of white people. They'd rather promote those civilizations as the work of ancient aliens over admitting that it was indigenous African development. Some scholars have even said that gods of Egypt were derived from those of the Near East and Europe rather than the other way around. Fortunately, scholars like Ivan von Soderman and Sheikh Anna Diop have worked tirelessly to refute these claims. Recently, in linguist and historian Christopher Ehret has written, it is doubtful whether Osiris can be regarded as equal to Tammuz or Adonis, or whether Hathor is related to the Great Mother. There are closer relations with Northeast African religions, the numerous animal cults, especially bovine cults and panther gods, and details of the ritual addresses, animal tails, masks, grass, aprons, etc. probably are of African origin. There you go. Probably that word again, right? So let me get rid of that. So the idea that when it comes up to what we understand as gods, these are some of the texts that some of the people are going to use, and this is some of the sources they're going to use. So he continues and says the kingship in particular shows some African elements such as the king as the head ritualist, medicine man, the limitations and renewal of the religion, jubilees, regicide, and the possession of the king's mother, a matriarchal element. So let's go to the next tab. The next tab in this book I got is Bes becomes the devil. Bes origins may have been in Nubia or deeper within the African continent, but his worship quickly spread far beyond African shores. So he's basically, let me see if they got a picture of him. Yeah, so this is who they talking about. Y'all probably like, Bes, that guy right there. And he's a pygmy individual, short, small, dwarf, possibly the ones that I was talking about earlier. Let's go to the next tab. The Yoruba, I don't even know why we have to even bring this up, but the Yoruba are said to have sprung from Lamarudo, one of the kings of Mecca, whose offspring were Aduduwa, the ancestor of the Arubas, the kings of Gogobero and of the Kukawa, two communities in the Haswa country. First of all, I'm not even going to get into it with the Yoruba because obviously Nigeria. Oh man, that light. What's going on with the light? What's up with that light? And bright light, bright light, bright light. I don't know what's going on with that. Let's see if I can fix it. No, it'll fix on its own. It'll fix on. Yep, see, there we go. I knew it was gonna fix on its own. But I'm not even going to get into that. I'm not even going to get into Nigeria. That's just a waste of talking. We know Nigeria is the African gods. But I do want to say that what I did learn about the African gods in Nigeria and Egypt is they have some similarities, but we're not going to go with that. They got black cyclops and the all-seeing eye. So they have these little people we find regarding black gods nearly everywhere. They were worshipped, were masters of their crafts. They were shamans, scientists, and healers of the great renown. In Europe and Britain, the dwarfs of early ages are remembered as smiths, artificers, and magicians, but no one has conjectured where they can have come from. Now, this is interesting because one of my favorite games is called God of War, and they got these dwarfs in it, and I can never remember the dwarfs' names for some reason, but they're depicted in blue. They're depicted blue skinned. Remember what I said earlier? Blue is mostly synonymous with being black. I didn't, when I play that game, I look at that differently. I look at the symbolism differently because of the simple fact of what I know. It's just interesting just to know that that's what some people believe. So when you know stuff like this, you're like, oh, okay. I look at it a little bit differently. Not saying that I believe it or it's factual or anything like that. It's just you just look at it differently. Africa, the home of the Pygmies, is presumably the birthplace of the dwarf races, now represented by the diminutive we folk of the Dark Continent. The earliest immigrants who made their way out of the land and wandered over Europe would have been akin to these stature like the Lapps, who followed them at short distance. These were the we folk in human form. So they're still talking about the pygmy in their hours. There's also the idea that the pygmy people, the short dwarfs or whatever you would like to call them, those are the ones that some people consider leprechauns, and who are the leprechauns in Ireland. Who is Baphomet? Ever heard of Baphomet? Demon god of the Illuminati, right? Not really. I almost left the section out of the book. That's what he says. He almost left it out, right? But he did. There are so many misguided and misinformed theories that surround the secret teachings of the Freemasons and other fraternal organizations that I thought it would be better to dedicate an entire book to making sense of these matters. And the other part of me just didn't want to engage this stuff. I mean, people really have their facts wrong. That's obvious. Part of the problem is the sources we consult for our information nowadays. Too many of us are consulting YouTube scholars and cuckoo authors failing to properly research the information for ourselves. That's actually true. A lot of people, I actually know a dude. This dude, I still can't believe this dude said this. And I had him on my show like 3 times too. This fool gonna tell me, he gonna say, I don't need to read books. I'll just watch YouTube. Man, I fell out my chair so hard when I heard that. And he told me that I was actually, this is his words. I quote what he says: "You are stupid for reading when there's YouTube." That's what he told me one time. I was like, what? Oh, God. Okay. But anyway, at the last minute, I decided to add a little commentary on the infamous Baphomet. Baphomet, if you didn't know, is also known as a black god, but mostly in the sense that he is thought of as a dark spirit or demon, sometimes called the Black Goat. The way the story goes, Baphomet was a demon worshipped by the Knights Templar, who are considered the predecessors of the Freemasons. Since people don't know any of the distinctions between any of these groups, they call them all Illuminati. Since before the time of the Knights Templar, the Catholic Church was teaching that any belief not approved by the church was heretic, pagan, and downright of the devil. The Baphomet is supposed to be Satan, and the Illuminati, or the groups that can be called that, worship this evil Baphomet. What's the real story? The real story, based on the historical evidence, is that we have today is that the Knights Templar are an elite Christian order, indeed persecuted by King Philip, a friend in the early 1300s, but this was because they had begun adopting Islamic practices from the Moors. In fact, the whole Western institution of banking and checking comes from the cultural transfer. At some point, the church wasn't pleased and began suspecting the Knights Templar of worshiping non-Christian gods. So naturally, they started imprisoning and torturing them. What's interesting about the Knights Templar is that I actually watched a documentary where they found some Islamic artifacts with some Knights Templar artifacts also. They actually think it was some treasure, so that's pretty interesting. Airq. Did you know the Airq lore speaks of semi-divine stone giants who lived in the woods and have rock hard skin obtained by rolling in earth and sand regularly? To this day, Nubian wrestlers cover themselves in ash or white clay, and the Greek legend of Heracles tells of him wrestling an African named Antaeus who draws his power from being connected to the earth. Next tab, we're almost done. If you thought Northwest Canada seemed like a distant place to find traces of Black men worshipped as gods, you might be surprised to know that we can go further, even further. Among the Inuit people of Greenland, Canada, and Alaska, Iyikaluduk is a god of healing. He is described as an old Black man who is so small he lives inside a stone. He is invoked as a miraculous healer of the sick. It is said to be dangerous to look directly into his jet black face because although he could cure one's illness merely by looking into their eyes, he could also give one illness in the same way. Now, who else could you look at and die instantly or something like that happen to? Well, the God in the Bible. Let's see. In 1776, when the United States government printed in the dollar in one claw of the eagle, if you've ever noticed, there is an olive branch in this claw. They said that represented peace. The Indian elders, and I've read this in many books from Native Americans, shared with me in South Dakota that to them, that represents, oh, I didn't even know I had a comment. I'm over here reading. Oh, there's nobody really saying nothing. I don't even know what this is. Anyway, the Indian elders shared with me in South Dakota that to them represents the enslavement of Black people and the prophecies of the Six Nations people. They say they will be two great uprisings by Black people to free themselves. We've seen one about 1964. There was one more uprising coming for the Black race of people, and then they will be released. And this is also going to have an effect on Native people, a good effect. There's a whole new set of prophecies from the Iroquois people about that, and I won't have time to go into that this morning. All right. So this is this is pretty interesting. Last tab. Traveling teachers. When I say that many of the world's Black gods were based on Black men who had traveled from afar, it wasn't simply that they had traveled from distant lands. The reverence they earned was based on what they did when they got to these new lands. Often, they introduced new traditions such as the Anu cultural complex, which eventually saved communities from running out of food and other resources when the climate shifted. According to Greek historian Diodorus Siculus, the great ancestor god Osiris left Nubia and continued his migration up the Nile Valley to found civilization in Asia. That's the last tab. This is the book. I highly recommend it. Very, very, very controversial. And the reason why I say it, because once you see these letters, Black God, or see anybody saying Black God, they'll see that Black and they'll see God, and they'll immediately not want to pay attention because it goes against what they believe and their feelings are hurt, and that's it. I always say this for everybody. I appreciate y'all for listening. I only do this because it's a passion of mine. I have no dog in this fight. I also want to make this known. I don't take social media serious because I know half the shit that people say to each other online, they would never say it to somebody's face. It's funny. It's comical. I laugh a lot when I see these messages. It's actually very entertaining to me because a lot of times I'm doing something that has me stuck in one place, such as when I have to go pick up my kids at school, I have to wait in this line. So when I have time to sit in the line, I go through social media and I go through my Jerry Springer moments because it's fun and entertaining. I always tell people this stuff. This online stuff is all Jerry Springer. If you really want to have serious conversations and you want to have some really serious, in-depth, some knowledge and all that, I'm always willing to have a podcast discussion, but I will challenge you if you have information that may not be accurate, but I won't challenge you in the wrong way. I challenge you on, hey, did you know that this could be updated because of this, that, and the third? Your reaction is my reaction. So until next time, like I always say this, everybody, gotta say it today. Knowledge is power.
Got a little hype now, can I let it die down? I remember days in the trench. Time to go hard. shit. Panamera maxed out, first class flights out Atlantic to Pacific, yeah, it's lit.